which is the fourth unit in your syllabus. Industrial relations, as we all know, is one of the four subsystems of human resource management. The other subsystems that we have seen in the organizational chart when we were doing the first unit, the personnel function was there, which deals with recruitment, selection, payment, etc. We had establishment function or administrative functions, which talked about the maintenance of guest houses, transport, welfare funds, etc., medical facilities, so on and so forth. We also had the HRD function, which talked about industrial development of human capital. That was in terms of training and development and appraisal system that has to be carried out. And the fourth function is called the firefighting function, which we refer to as industrial relations function as such. Now, what is industrial relations? Industrial relations is basically the study of laws, conventions, right? It is laws, conventions, and institutions that regulate the workplace, right? Now, it is a fundamentally important aspect of our way of life, our culture, and society. The term industrial relations refers to the collective relations between employers and employee or employees as a group. It underscores the importance of compromise and accommodation in place of conflict and controversy in resolving disputes between labor and management, right? Industrial relation means different things to different people, and this particular illustration depicts how IR shapes our working life, our society, and the national economy. From workers' perspective, it is for better pay, better workplace environment and safety. It is for their job security and for the training of employee. For employers' perspective, it is productivity, flexibility of workforce, employment laws, managing industrial conflict. From societal perspective, it is living wage, equality of opportunity, work-life balance, and rights of individuals. And from government's perspective, it is competitiveness, reducing unemployment, globalization, and controlling the economy. So these are the four perspectives that we have got to look at. As workers, we associate industrial relations with unions, industrial awards, and labor laws that sets the condition under which we work. This includes our pay, safety, employment, security, and opportunities for training. Now, over 150 years ago, people worked 6 days a week, 12 hours a day or more, in sometimes almost 18 hours, and there were no provisions for sick pay or holiday pay. Now, therefore, there was no protection for children who were often a form of cheap labor, or worse, were sold into slavery. As a society, we have come a long way since then. And this is largely due to the formation and actions of labor unions. Now, before I go into more details of industrial relations here, we shall have to see as to what was the condition of workers that prevailed in after the industrial revolution that took place. I think we all know about industrial revolution. Can anybody tell me when did it start actually? The decade when it started?
The late 18th century.
Late 18th century. Right. Anybody else who can tell me when it all started? Can anybody tell me when it all started?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. When? Any precise date that you are aware about?
Sir, 1960 around.
Not 1960.
So we can say
Yeah, it was during the 1760s rather than 60, because we do not have the precise date as to when 1960, 61, 62, but it was during the 60s that it all started. And the phenomena which led to this industrial revolution also needs to be known to all of you. We know that it all started in Great Britain during the 1960s. Now, Great Britain as a society, we all know, is different today than it was in past. They had in the parliament two houses that still exist, one known as the House of Commons and the other one known as the House of Lords, right? And during the 1760s, most of the members of House of Commons used to be the business persons because they had money to contest elections and could acquire a seat in the parliament, right? Whereas House of Lords was totally dominated, not totally, it was almost 100% dominated by the landlords of the country. Now, when these people, when colonization of different parts of the world started, the businessmen acquired quite a lot of money, but their proposals were normally blocked by the House of Lords, as a result of which their profitability was not to increase, and they wanted to control a larger part of the world. Now, during this particular period, what happened that there was some kind of a move on the part of this newly emerging bourgeois class to acquire property, right? Now, this was the time when landlords who had less money, they started selling their lands, or those who were slightly better off, they started consolidating their land, right? So land consolidation started in Great Britain, which is also called the agricultural revolution. The phenomena that was followed was called enclosure movement. Lands were being enclosed. Now, for the enclosure movement to start, the land holdings were of different types in Great Britain. These land holdings were freehold property. There was leasehold property, right? These were the two different types. Now, in the leasehold property, there used to be a long lease where the maximum period was 99 years of lease was there, which is called long lease. There used to be short lease, which was of 20 years or less. We also find that there were classes of society which was living on the lands of the landlords. They were known as the cottagers these cottagers had the right to build their cottages or houses on the property of the landlords, and in lieu of having the houses, they were to work for the landlords on their land. Right? There was also another class known as squatters. These squatters were those people who did not have the right to build houses. They were some kind of a nomad society and were living on the houses of on the jungles of the landlord without putting up a hut or cottage. They were having right to collect woods from the jungles of the landlord. They were having rights to fishing in the ponds of the landlords. And in lieu of this right, they were also supposed to work for the landlords. Now, as enclosure movement started, the first people to get affected were the squatters and the cottagers. They were evicted from the land, and therefore they had no longer had the right to have cottage, or right to fisheries, or right to collect woods, or right to collect fruits from the jungles of the landlords. The second class which were affected was short lease holders, which was all cancelled, and as a result of these, short lease holders also got on the streets. It was only two classes which remained: the free hold property, which was owned by the landlords themselves, and the long lease holders, where 99 years of lease was there, but they put a condition that no longer anybody will be given land on long lease. So as the period of 99 years got completed, the lease was evicted. The leaseholders were evicted from those lands. Now, this was the time when this newly emerging capitalists, the capitalists on the making, as we call them, they started putting up some kind of factories or industries. Now, there is a coincidence that this was the time when pump sets were invented to take out water from the coal mines and other mines. This was also the time when Arkwright and Cartwright, two inventors, invented flying shuttles. But before flying shuttles, they invented the thing called spinning wheel. So now this spinning wheel was to make threads out of cotton that was being grown in England. And this brought about a revolution as the newly built up factories started weaving clothes and selling in the colonial markets. So on the one side, they started desolating the home industry of the colony and started multiplication of production in Great Britain. The center, of course, was the Manchester, city of Manchester, where most of the industries initially came up, called cotton textile industry. Now, as industries required a certain preconditions, that is, industry to grow, we need first cheap and surplus labor. Now, this cheap and surplus labor was readily available in the form of people who were evicted from the lands of the landlords by this newly emerging class. Second was that they required some moderate inflation to take place. Now, inflation, incidentally, came into Great Britain during the same period, the moderate inflation that we call, because the bullions, the silver bullions that was brought by the Europeans from South American countries, it was looted by the British sea pirates, and taken to Great Britain, and this bullion was converted into currencies because there was no governmental currency that was applicable at that point of time. It also so happened that when this currency business was going on, lots of people even melted their utensils, silver utensils, to convert that into currencies, and that was circulated in the market. And that brought about some kind of inflation. The third precondition for industrial growth to take place is that there has to be market available to sell the product that was being manufactured. These colonies served as a ready market for this phenomena. So all three conditions were being fulfilled for the industrial growth to take place. But our interest is not in the industrial revolution as such at this point of time. Our interest is in the people who got evicted from the land and became laborers in the newly emerging industries. Their conditions were pretty bad. We all know that they were working for almost 18 hours a day. We also know that the women workers were either not having a thumb or a forefinger, and their numbers were somewhere around 20%. The children aged between 8 to 10 were almost 15 to 20% who got blinded because they were taken to the chimneys to clean those chimneys when the industry was still working. Now, this was the condition on the one side. On the other side, the living condition was very, very poor because there was no place for them to live. And these industries provided them a place to live on a 6-hourly basis. So nobody was allowed a bed beyond 6 hours. So one group was coming to sleep and they used to kick out the other group from the bed. And it was in 24 hours use. So industry was also working 24 hours in shift, and these housings were also working in the same manner. There was a restriction on washing facilities within the factory premises. So they could not wash or dry their clothes within the factory premises, and they hardly had time to go out. And there was a restriction that where are they going to wash their clothes and dry them. So under this particular condition, these workers were living, and soon we find that this phenomena was to get reverted when unions were formed in Great Britain during the later part of the 19th century, that is around the late 1800. We find that unions started emerging in, and the Unions Act, Great British Unions Act, was passed somewhere during the 1870s. It was with the intention to provide some protection to these workers so that their living condition could become better, and also they will get some facilities and some rights, because slavery, condition of slavery was to get over. It was the beginning of the World War which brought about an impetus in this particular process, when we find that in order to keep the wheels of the industry working, these workers were provided some kind of facilities by the philanthropist industrialists, and they provided them some kind of a facility. This was also the period when we find that World Labour Organization, ILO, was formed, International Labour Organization in Geneva, and all countries were asked to send their representatives to those, the ILO. As a result of which, in India also, we find that a union was formed known as which union was formed in 1920s. Anybody who has got some idea? 1919, 1920.
So ILO was formed in 1990.
No. ILO was formed in 1990s. Rowlatt Act was there. Jallianwala Bagh incident took place the same time, and it was the union that was formed was known as ATUC, All India Trade Union Congress, right? All India Trade Union Congress was formed, and this was ATUC, which was the sole union at that point of time, which was having representative of all the later splinter groups. Now, they sent their representatives to the ILO, and this was basically the beginning of providing some kind of protection. We also find that...
Excuse me, sir.
Yes?
Sir, sorry to interrupt you, but are you changing the slides?
No, I did not change any slide.
Okay, sir. Okay.
I said that before I proceed further, let me give you a background as to how these unions were formed. Because the last line that we read was the labor unions, how it all emerged, and what was the necessity. Okay. Now, what we find
sir.
that it was during 1881 that we find an act was passed in Bombay then, known as the Bombay Factories Act, right? Now, this Factories Act was passed in 1881 with the efforts of the factory manager named Major Moore. Now, this factory manager wanted to do some regulations of the system, as a result of which he got this act passed called the Bombay Factories Act, and this act was to regulate the employment of workers in the industry. This was more to favor the industrialists rather than the unions. Now, as we progress further, what we find that in 1926, the Indian Trade Union Act was passed by the colonial government. It was known as Indian Trade Unions Act, which later on was changed in after 1947, and it became the Trade Unions Act rather than Indian Trade Unions Act. It was in 1946 that we got an act passed known as the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act that was being passed. We also, I forgot to mention that in 1922, we had an act passed which is to do with the social security system. And that was passed in 1922. In 1947, we find that ID Act, that is called Industrial Disputes Act, was passed. And in 1948, the Factories Act of 1881, 1935 was revamped, and it was made as the Factories Act rather than Indian Factories Act, as it was called in 1935. And we had many more acts that was being passed later on. Now, what we find that there was one more phenomena that we need to learn, that during the first half of 1900, that is between 1901 to 1947, it was the period when we were fighting the British people. Excuse me, I'll get back in 2 minutes, please. There's somebody disturbing. Yeah,